they have, they kind of divided up the fighting into 4 types. There's T, Da, Shuai, Na. T is kicking, right? Anything with your legs, you're striking. Da is punching, elbow, striking. Shuai is throwing, it's like Shuai Jiao. Na is ChinNa, is joint locks, right? T, Da, striking and kicking, or further, they're put together. Basically, it's kickboxing, right? If you're striking. And then Shuai Na go together, it's throwing, like standing, wrestling, and then grappling. That's the way they break it down. So they're just categorical ways of organizing technique. So I'm not sure about every style in China, but almost every style at least has ChinNa in it, you know, joint locking in it. And the same as jiu-jitsu or judo, everybody has, you know, figures out the same stuff. The techniques are fundamentally the same, right? There's only so many ways you can kind of lock a joint or break a limb. It's the differences will be depending on the style. The differences will be, some will be how which ones they favor depending on their technique base, and how they enter the techniques and apply force. But you know, breaking the joint's always going to be about the same. Like when I studied, the style I grew up in, doing when I was a child, the Kung Fu, we had like a lot of them. There were, you know, 50 set leverage techniques we learned and all these things. And then, you know, all the years I spent doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling, you know, fundamentally all the same ideas and from the other styles. So if you've done, you know, most martial arts, you've learned ChinNa, what they would call ChinNa, like joint locking. It also includes what they call BiQi, like sealing your air. We like to refer to it as choking, right, or strangling. So just like Jiu-Jitsu, if you're applying a choke or a strangle, it's also in the category of ChinNa, yeah, and knockout. And then there's a subset, a subcategory, not one of the 4 major categories, T, Da, Shuai, Na, that's also under ChinNa, and it's called Diem, which is point hitting. Dim mak to us, right? Not really dim mak, but that's the idea of it. And it's very smart. You know, the Chinese are fully aware, unlike the movies we love. If you're brawling with someone, you're not hitting gallbladder 9 and liver 12, that's not happening. You're lucky just to hit the head. When do you hit those points? When you have somebody pinned, because you can't move, right? So you lock up a joint, you pin someone down, and then you can hit them on a point. So that point striking is a subset of ChinNa. So that's kind of how it's broken down, right? So we're not gonna, today, or this weekend, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to show the techniques that over the years that I've found to be practical. So you have to be realistic. A lot of the ChinNa, the way you learn it, you know, like the guy throws a punch, you grab his hand and do a joint lock. That never happens. Never. I've never seen it. You've probably never seen it. Maybe some drunk guy in a bar. So it's very difficult to apply joint locks of that kind if you're in a real fight with someone who's really fighting back, has any real skill, who's very strong. Otherwise, every single MMA fight would end with a standing joint lock. People know these. Why does it never go? You know, why does that never happen? It's super hard to do on someone who's really strong fighting back. So you can't. So ChinNa is not a style. You can't. You wouldn't just learn ChinNa and expect to fight in general. You have to couple it, combine it with striking, right? You have to be able to set it up and wrestling. Right? Like old Shuai Jiao has lots of joint locks. A lot of them are illegal, I think, in the modern world, but you know, they wrap their uniform and breakers, so there's a lot of that going on, but it's in a wrestling format. In the striking format, you know, you're striking your way in, you end up clinching, and then you can play ChinNa. So, you know, we're not going to do any of those. I don't think it's a bad idea to learn them that way, but like when I was a kid, the guy would throw a punch, and we'd just kind of grab his hand and do a joint lock. And I knew when I was 11 that's not going to happen. You know, it's just a way to learn it. So we're going to try to stick with the techniques that are higher percentage and how you would actually apply them, like for real, you know. And there's going to be 2 categories. We'll talk about in a second connection. There's active connection, there's passive connection. So passive connections, you put me in a headlock, and I defend with, and I get out and use a joint lock. It's passive because you connected to me, right? Active is never going to be I walk up and just grab you and apply a leverage, because no one's going to let it, you know, right? Active is I need to strike my way in, and as you're defending, I'm going to try to apply a joint lock or some kind of hold. That's the idea. So we're gonna do it from that format. I mean, we'll explain kind of how it works, but then the entries are going to be like that, like more practical, and techniques I've actually done too. So, you know, not that others won't work, but that subset we're going to go over, people use all the time for real, so it's good. Now, the name, ChinNa. So, Qin is, in normal kind of Chinese parlance, it's just grab something. I usually grab something, right? Qin. In the martial context, it's to connect. The idea is connecting, not just kind of like I'm grabbing you somewhere. The idea is I need a connection. So obviously, I can't apply any kind of a wrestling or grappling technique unless I'm touching you already, right? Now, if I kick you or hit you, I'm touching you, but only momentarily, right? So if I punch you in the face, it's a connection for a millisecond and you got hurt. We're talking about a connection as in I'm connected for a long time. I'm connected the whole time, right? So the connection, or it could be just grips, if you, like in judo when we talk about grips, or wrestling we say come to grips. The grips, your connection is going to determine what techniques you can do. You know what I mean? If I'm grabbing your wrist, I'm not going to footlock you, obviously. And even in the context of where I'm gripping, it will determine how I can apply force. Am I over gripping? Do I have your wrist? That kind of thing. So Qin is a specific idea of getting these correct connections. So like like yesterday we're grappling, we're doing standing wrestling, right? Like we talked about it, like Frank and I, grabbing the neck is far inferior to grabbing the occiput if you're like in a head and arm clench. So these kind of things are very, very detailed in the study. So it's not just random, I kind of grab and try to break something. And that's Qin, I suppose, but that's not really the science of it. So the grips are very specific. Once you have Qin, like a correct connection, then you Na. And Na in Chinese usually is to pick something up or hold it. And that implies now, from my whatever grips I have, I can apply leverage through your bones, yeah, and hold you there. Yes, sir?
What do you mean by leverage?
So we'll talk about it in a bit. You know what a lever is, right? Like you use a lever to magnify your force.
By lever, you mean your elbows? Or?
No, your whole body's articulated lever. So leverage is how I'm going to apply my force to magnify the force while I'm locking your joints.
Magnify?
Yeah. Pardon me?
What do you mean by magnify?
Make it more. Yeah, you'll see when we get to it, right? So I have Qin, I have connection. Na implies, again, not that I'm like physically picking you up. Na implies I'm holding you. So what does hold mean? For all the techniques, you need to, now, you could grab someone's finger and break it. I guess it's ChinNa, but of course that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about locking their joints to their pelvis, their center. That's how you hold someone. So, if I grabbed you and I started to twist your wrist, it would hurt. But if I'm not locking, you'll just hit me with your other hand, right? Or you'll get away, you'll start kicking me or doing. If I lock completely through your structure into your hips, I can control your entire center. And then I finish. That would be the idea. So ChinNa, you hear seizing, locking, that's correct, but it's very specific. So the Qin is connect. Well, think of it, I feel like the best English definition is connection. Right? Because then you have an idea of like, oh, we're connected. It's not just a random, we're touching each other or grabbing somewhere. Na is a specific way to lock the joints. And it includes, of course, choking. It's a specific way to squeeze the neck, fundamentally, right? So that's kind of the definition of it. Then, yes, sir?
Sorry, I never thought of joint locks as connected to the pelvis. Do all correct joint locks? Do they all connect to my pelvis?
For the most part. They don't all have to. But the thing is, even if I'm going to break your wrist and I have grips on your hand, if you're free to move, I can't do it.
Okay.
Or I could do it while you're hitting me or something, right? So I really need to kind of have control. That's the Na idea. Maybe it's not always 100%. Usually it is, actually. But you have to be in some kind of control to where you really can't fight back or whatever.
I never thought to look at it as the hips, but yeah.
Correct.
So in other words, to do a joint lock correctly, you have to lock the joint, but also make it so that you also have control of their waist.
Correct. That's basically the idea.
Or locking their waist.
Right. Right. Now, when you're controlling the mass, it's like someone's body, right? I just break it down this way to make it simple. I talk about like you can go through bone leverage. That's ChinNa. It's mostly you thinking Like you could do ChinNa on a skeleton in the lab, you know what I mean, with no muscles. You could grab the skeleton, you know, the thing that's hanging in a science lab. If you twisted the wrist correctly, it would lock all the way to his pelvis and it would flip over or whatever. It doesn't require, you're not really controlling the mass directly, it's through the bones. And then there's mass leverage. And mass leverage is what we use to do when we wrestle, right? I could have a grappling dummy with no bones and body lock it and throw it down with leverage, right? There's basically, you can understand what I'm talking about, right? So a takedown is much easier just to use mass leverage. I double leg you, I bear hug you, and I pick you up over my hip. There's leverage, but I don't care about your bones. I'm just moving your mass. ChinNa is the opposite. I don't care about any of your mass or muscles. I'm just locking your bones. Yeah, and they're usually combined. Now, when you're stand-up fighting, it's much easier to use mass leverage. That's why you don't see Aikido throws in MMA. Do they work? They can work. They're really hard to do because everyone's fighting back. So, you know, you bear hug the guy, or like if you're doing like swai jiao or judo, you grab the cloth and you're moving the mass. On the ground is where it's easier to apply joint locks. That's how jiu-jitsu works, right? If you take the guy down and you use mass leverage, like by laying on top of him so he can't move, or squeezing with your legs, or what, then it's much easier to apply the leverage. So I want to bear that in mind. That's why a lot of the stand-up techniques have to be in specific situations. Again, we're not going to grab the wrist and try to take people down, right? And then we're going to talk about taking them down. We're not going to do jiu-jitsu today, but the Chinese have rudimentary, not really ground fighting, but they have pins. They understood you put a guy on the ground, you need to control them, right? And they're actually very good. But they're not more about wrestling on the ground.